Do you feel a sense of disengagement and like general aimlessness? Like you're not really focused on anything in particular and you're just sort of like generally underwhelmed? Well, you're probably very bored, okay? You're probably aimlessly scrolling through your phone and you're like, what am I supposed to do with my freaking life, okay? If that's the case, you've definitely clicked on the right video. And in this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into boredom. I also want to articulate some of the thought processes that you're going through leading up to your like oh no moment where you realize your life doesn't have a purpose, okay? You're probably starting to realize that something spiritual is missing from your life. You're not very engaged. You're not very like in that creative headspace, and you're not really excited about the work that you do anymore. I also want to sort of explain to you how experiencing boredom properly could actually be a really good tool to actually get your life back on track if you know how to use it properly. But in order to do this, we need to first understand what is boredom, where it lives, so that we can get the most out of life. Okay. To do this, I'm actually going to put an overlay up just over right now, so that you can actually understand like where boredom lives. So on one axis, you've got skill, and then on the other axis, you've got challenge. Now at the lower section, like where you're not really pushing yourself that hard, you've got boredom. And then on the other side of like the bandwidth of flow, you've got burnout. Okay. So ideally where your peak happiness is when you're on like that edge of challenge, where you can sort of be excited that you're not burnt out, it's more sustainable, but you're also not bored, okay? Another way to describe this would also be like the stress curve, the bell curve. You might have seen this before. So at the early stages in like the green zone, I'm just sort of looking at it behind my camera here, you've got too little stress, okay? You're like, you're underwhelmed, you're underload. It's sort of like too laid back and you're not really like engaged in what you're doing because things are too easy, okay? Then you sort of get into like the optimal stress zone where it sort of leads up to the fatigue zone, okay? Then that goes right up to your performance. It goes down to the other side where there's like a level of exhaustion. Now, I actually encourage from time to time as a man for you to go into exhaustion maybe once a year at least, so that you know where your edge is, okay? That's what constantly pushing yourself and knowing where your edge is where excitement can be. But you don't want to obviously stay there for too long, but it can be very good for you to sort of push yourself to that level of challenge and strain once a year, just to be like, oh, I'm a man, I'm going to do hard things. But as I've talked about in previous videos, like you don't want to get to like the burnout stage. That's where the danger zone is. Got a whole video series if you want to go check that out. You don't want to be in that zone for too long, and only you really know where your level is with that. But I'd encourage you to like at least test the waters if you're more on that spectrum of like being underwhelmed, because that's probably why you're watching this video. Anyway, with that being said, let's get cracking into the next section. So there's so many ways that we can actually avoid boredom these days. Like we've got our phones and the internet that are constantly like bombarding our brain with all this outside stimuli, and we never actually get to a stage where we experience our own thoughts. You're probably like thinking around this time, like watching a video like this, like, it's okay not to be bored once in a while, okay? Well, the science and myself actually says otherwise, especially if you don't know how to experience boredom properly and how to utilize it to actually accelerate your life in the direction that you want it to, okay? So how can boredom actually help you to discover your purpose and move your life forward, okay? It's actually quite simple. When you get bored, when you actually put yourself in like an active meditative state, your mind actually wanders, and this is actually really, really useful for you to actually get creative thoughts coming in your head, because you don't really have a choice, okay? You get really good at like creative problem solving, and you start to like entertain your own brain because you no longer have that outside stimulus to sort of consume anymore. There's this thing that Tyler talked about in many videos before. You become the creator and not the consumer, and it helps to get you excited about life a lot more because now you're like, oh, I'm actually creating my own thoughts. So in this sort of like aimless state, it actually provokes a lot of like thoughts about your life and like the thoughts on the future, on what you want to do with your life. It gives you like that bird's eye view, like instead of being focused on the internet and things that are on your phone, or these little scurrying around with all these little micro thoughts, it gives you altitude. It gives you like a bird's eye view where you can look at your life as a whole and you're like, what do I want to do with my life? There's actually like a term called autobiographical planning, which actually means that you look at your life as a story and like where you actually want to go in the future, and to create your own story, okay? when you get bored, it actually activates this. It actually gets that level of creativity back. And that's why it's actually a really, really big part of my program to actually reduce a lot of stimulus and for you to just get back to basics where you're actually talking into a camera or a voice recorder so that you can actually work out what you want to do with your life, like what excites you. But yeah, that's besides the point. Being bored is essential for you to do goal setting, okay? It allows you to sort of things to come up in your mind that really inspire you and excite you, and then you can sort of start to do the planning process and get excited about that planning process and move your life forward. So the trade-off with boredom is you actually feel very like disinterested and disengaged a lot of the time, and also very sluggish. But this sort of behavior can actually push you towards action that would be really, really like positive for your life. Also, in the constant absence of boredom, you could actually be trapped in a lot of like unfulfilling situations where you might miss out on a lot of like emotionally and socially rewarding experiences that would be really, really good for your growth. Also, boredom can actually be a really, really good indicator of your current state. Like, it often means that like something in your situation isn't quite lining up and it isn't really working for you. You're sort of just like generally missing that excitement. Boredom also can be like a really, really good warning sign that you're not really doing what it is that you want. And it can actually push you to like switch goals so that you're not actually bored anymore. So where a lot of people go wrong is they actually switch to something that is like more overstimulating, so they block out what they actually need in order to be able to progress. Okay, so if you're getting some out of this video so far, just hit that subscribe button and also maybe follow me on Instagram. So getting bored is actually really, really good for you. Okay, if your brain is constantly stimulated, you never actually take a step back and like ponder like what is the bigger picture here. Okay, you never actually take a moment to go, what is my long-term goals and how could I actually achieve them? You never actually go through some of those strategies because you're constantly getting all this like stimulus from outside sources. So you actually have a choice every time you're like waiting for something or you're actually bored. Okay, am I going to pull the phone out or am I actually going to get bored? Now, if you go with the first situation and you actually pull your phone out, you're going to go into that headspace that you know all too well, where you'll get that immediate pleasure, you get that immediate gratification, and you sort of fill in the time. You might actually get rid of boredom for a moment, but you're actually making yourself less creative. You drown out some of the worry, you drown out some of that boredom and maybe even some of that pain, and you significantly reduce a lot of your creativity. The other situation is you actually use boredom properly, okay? You move your mind towards doing something productive if you learn how to orientate yourself every time you get bored. Personally, I've got this thing in my phone where I look at the list of things to do and I ponder, okay, these are the things I need to do. What are some things in my mind so that I can actually make these things happen, okay? One of them, which was the procrastination in doing this video. And then I realized, there's a few things that I need to get sorted, hence like this new setup with the microphone. This only took a couple of hours, but in my mind it took 2 days. Forcing yourself into doing hard things once in a while really sort of motivates you and gets your self-esteem up. So you might actually use this time to learn something about yourself. Okay, you're going to sink into that boredom, go into a little bit of a meditative state, and realize there's not a lot going in there, and it might actually cause a bit of anxiety. It certainly did for me when I started to go down the rabbit hole of like meditation and self-development. But it was a really big call for me to come to that realization that something was wrong with my life. So going into this meditative state and thinking about the future doesn't actually give you like instant gratification, and actually might be boring for you to do in the moment. But at least you know that you're actually doing something that's going to enrich your brain and actually force you and set you up to do hard things so that your future can be actually the best one. So I actually get my clients bored if they're not already there themselves, because when a client is bored, it creates a space for them to answer the deeper questions about their life, okay? It gives like altitude, as we talked about before, so they can go, where do I want my life to go? And they gives them an opportunity to answer those questions. It's actually a very boring experience. It's actually a little bit painful, but my clients understand that without going through short-term pain, emotional pain, for maybe 10 to 12 weeks, they know that their life's just going to go around and around in circles. So part of my program is what's called the bathroom of solitude. Okay, this is not a very, it's not an exercise for the faint-hearted. It's where a man actually locks himself in the bathroom, for their own bathroom, for 4 days and really gets to the bottom of all this turmoil and things that are going on in their life and actually answers some of these existential questions about their life. This is only for serious men that really hate their current circumstances and they want to get out as fast as possible. So if you got to this part in the video, I encourage you to at least follow me on Instagram, potentially subscribe to this channel. I'm giving away so much free content. I hate for you to miss out. And if you're like this aimless sort of person where you're kind of going through the motions of work, you're kind of making good money, but you're kind of bored and you're like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Then I'm the type of person that you should be following. Also, another situation that you could be going through is like you're overwhelmed, okay? You've got too many avenues in your mind opening up and you kind of feel like you're a little bit ADHD and you're on coffee a lot and you can't really work out which one you should lock into to get traction on so that you can move your life forward. Now, if you're really, really serious, I'd encourage you to DM me, okay? You and I can actually get on a one-on-one discovery call and see if we're actually a good fit. It's basically just going to be a pretty, ordinary conversation. And then if we actually are a good fit, I'll put you through my 10-week program, Deciphered, and you're going to come out the other side a completely changed man, okay? It's going to be kind of hard, okay? You're going to have to commit to this. You're going to have to clean your slate a little bit, but I can almost guarantee that you'll come out the other side and you'll be like, holy shit, this is what I was meant to do, and I'm no longer bored, I'm no longer or overwhelmed, and I'm like super excited to get to work every day. That's what I hope for you. If that's something that you're interested in, DM me. Have a good day.